to establish norms, rules, and orders that are based on the majority desire. Or not necessarily the majority desire, but establishing a contract between people, both the minority within a society and the majority desire, on what are the acceptable ways of operating or interacting with each other, engaging with each other, and to ensure that those norms and values that are set are not discriminating or not disenfranchising on any group. So there's a certain understanding, and in the event that there is some disadvantage, is an acceptance that a group accepts that my preference is disadvantageous to the wider group, or the wider group accepts that they have to let go, they have to compromise on a certain value to engage or to be inclusive to another group. I think that's the premise by which we can then look to address a lot of these systemic issues, particularly the breakdown of the home. So, for example, one of the major challenges I think with the home environment is the economic situation. We have a situation now where many young people are saying, I prefer to not make many children. And much of that has to do with their perhaps experiences in relationships where they realize that it's very difficult sometimes to put together a home or to ensure that your partner remains committed to a particular relationship. And a lot of that is economic. Sometimes it's the father not being able to support that child. Sometimes it's the mother not having the resources to be able to sustain that home. So many young people now are saying, you know what, I prefer to not go down that route of making multiple children.
Hello, everyone. We are here with another episode of Ideation. And basically, what we aim to do is discuss ideas for development. And what better guest to have to discuss ideas for development than Ajani Lebon? I'll tell you a little bit about Ajani. Ajani Lebon is a development professional with expertise in youth and leadership development spanning various levels. His leadership has contributed to the enhancement of youth education and social policy in St. Lucia and the Commonwealth region. Ajani is an active contributor to civil society and youth-led spaces, and most recently served as the program manager in St. Lucia for the USAID for funded Youth Resilience, Inclusion and Empowerment Program. He was also a former national executive member of the St. Lucia National Youth Council and Vice Chairperson, Advocacy and Partnership at the Commonwealth Students Association. Currently, Ajani provides institutional support to various local organizations. He is a member of Sir Arthur Lewis Community College Board of Governors and studies political science at the University of the West Indies. Ajani's views youth leadership as critical to resisting systematic marginalization and as a tool for organizing and channeling the potential of youth for individual, community, and national transformation. So I think it's a very good guest we have with us today. And the premise that will be leading our discussion, what we really want to talk about is we see a problem, and our premise is the loss of traditional values have left young people more depressed, more addicted, and more aggressive. And I premise this based on the book that I've been reading. It's a very interesting book. It's called The Third Pillar. It was written by an economist named Rajan. He is a former IMF chief economist and a high priest of financial economics. So he works in IMF, and we have some IMF data that I will be quoting while we make that discussion. I just want to just give you a little glimpse of what he said. He was talking about the whole idea in this book, The Third Pillar, is that the market under state has left the community behind. And this is what's causing a lot of the problems that we're seeing, especially with our young people. And he said the pillars are seriously unbalanced today. Communities have been specially impacted. In the United States, minority and immigrant communities were hit first by joblessness, which led to social breakdown in the 1970s and 1980s. In the last 2 decades, communities in small towns and semi-rural areas, typically white, have been experiencing a similar decline as large local manufacturers close down. Often, this results in the loss of comfortable middle-income jobs held by moderately educated. Families have been tremendously stressed with an increase in divorce, teenage pregnancy, and single parents household. In turn, these have led to the deterioration in the environment for children, resulting in poor school performance, high dropout rates, the increased attractiveness of drugs, gangs, and crimes, and persistent youth unemployment. The opioid epidemic is just one symptom of the hopelessness and despair that accompanies the breakdown of once healthy communities. He also went on to say, the rest are left behind in the rest are left behind in the declining communities where it is hard for young to learn what is needed for jobs. Communities are trapped in the vicious cycle where economic decline fuels social decline, which fuels further economic decline. The consequences are devastating. Alienated individuals bereft of hope and the feeling of belonging that comes from being grounded in a healthy community becomes prey to demagogues on both sides of extreme right and left who caters for the worst prejudice. So today we are going to basically discuss all of this in our context in the Caribbean, in St. Lucia, and with us, what is the best person to discuss that with somebody with practical on the ground knowledge, um, works with young people who and is interested in developing young people, Mr. LeBon. Welcome, Mr. LeBon. I know this was a lengthy introduction. How are you doing, sir?
Pretty good. Thanks for having me, Kevin. I'm really honored to be on your podcast, and I look forward to our conversation.
All right, thank you very much. So let's just delve straight into it. What are you up to currently? What's going on with you? What are you doing? And tell us about that.
All right. So right now, I am the program manager with the Ubuntu Movement, which is a non-governmental organization, and we operate from the Seeds Resource Center in Vieux Fort. And so it's a center that was established in 2023 to respond to the gun violence in Vieux Fort. And the center provides basic services, provides access to a library. We have some computers for persons who want to come in and whether it be prepare your job resume or put a document together. We also have some staff from the St. Lucia Social Development Fund. So these staff help us to provide services to persons within the community. So the Resource Center is in Vieux Fort, and my role with Ubuntu right now is to help in the implementation of programs such as our Community Violence Intervention Program, which is really a program geared at working with gang-involved youth and preventing the de-escalation of violence, particularly gun violence in Vieux Fort. Apart from Ubuntu, as mentioned, I'm working right now with the Slafford Community College on the board, and I also serve on other committees, currently providing support to some NGOs as well. And yeah, just continuing being an advocate because I think as a young person, there's a lot that young people can speak and can express themselves about. There's a lot that I think we tend to underestimate about young people. And my role is to support as many young people as possible to find their voice, to understand their voice, and to express themselves in whatever way that they feel comfortable.
All right, great. Your primary work is with young people. How did you come about it? How did you get interested in that type of work? Take us through your journey and finding why is that something that you'd want to do as an individual.
So I tend to think it had a lot to do with my upbringing. I grew up in a home where My dad was really involved in social or civic engagement. So very involved in civil society groups, involved in the Central National Trust, and was a very outspoken person. So I think he encouraged us as children to express ourselves. My mom, a teacher at the Miko Primary School for over 40 years. I also in growing up at the Seventh-day Adventist Church, being part of the Adventurers, the Pathfinders, the Master Guide Club, those uniform groups in the church, being involved in some of the youth movements, youth groups in the church. Then going to the Vifford Comprehensive School. And it was at Vifford Compre I was introduced to the National Youth Council, where I attended a camp of the NYC. Now, even outside of the NYC involvement, I was already involved in like PT clubs in NICU. So I did track with Night Riders Track Club. I feel like a lot of those experiences working with young people, by the time I was exposed to the NYC, there was somewhat of a desire to work in groups, so being involved in the NYC, I think, connected that desire to be in a group and the desire to see better for young people that led me to then becoming a member of the NYC and becoming more of an advocate for youth issues, particularly how youth issues affect the development of our country.
Can you see any pattern where the persons that you are dealing with, is there any data, is there any pattern to show or to link? Because the research on paper says one thing. They would say lack of the institution of the family, lack of father in the home, the boys' crisis, fatherhood by Miles Monroe. Different data you read shows you that the lack of parental involvement, which stems back to lack of the traditional values that we hold as a society, as I believe is being denigrated at this point. Are you seeing that the persons or the victims or the perpetrators of difficult behavior, are you seeing their pattern in opposite to what you grew up in, which is father led home, parents involved, institutions? Are you seeing a pattern in that?
Yeah, I think it's very consistent that many young people who, whether it be they're not as interested in youth organizations or they may not have a desire to be involved in any community-wide action, so perhaps being more individually oriented, and also young people who are seen as at risk to violence and crime. Most of them would come from environments that would be considered disadvantaged. So whether it be coming out from a home that is deemed as dysfunctional and without the father, or in a single parent home, being involved in an informal group, gang, in the absence of that love that they would have gotten at home, that connection, or what people may consider or what is deemed as adverse childhood experiences. So if you experience some trauma during your childhood, unresolved trauma, particularly exposure to violence in the home or exposure to violence in the community, you've seen somebody get shot or you've seen violent acts against somebody that you love, those things tend to be reflected, or these things tend to be consistent in the youth that we tend to work with in the programs.
And I totally agree to that because I teach at an all boys school. I work with young people to some degree. So the solution to that, and if we're seeing that there's a pattern, and the pattern goes back to what we held as valuable as a nation, what we held as valuable as a country, as a people. One of the things that we used to value, I'm not sure if that is something that we still value. I have my own opinions on that the family structure is not valued as it was before. And that's part of a broader conversation. That's part of a broader implementation of different ideas into the society. So I don't want to focus too much on what's happening on the ground, because we all know what's happening on the ground. We all see the data of what is happening on the ground. But moving forward, what can we do as individuals? And because I want our conversation to be more about practical solutions to the problem that has been befalling us for the longest while. What can we do to reorient our society, our communities, our individuals to look at the to not let go of the best of our inheritance, our proper traditional values? How is that practical?
All right, so I'm a big student of John Rawls, which is the philosopher, sociologist that premised the whole social contract theory on the need for society to establish norms, rules, and orders that are based on the majority desire. Or not necessarily the majority desire, but establishing a contract between people, both the minority within a society and the majority desire, on what are the acceptable ways of operating or interacting with each other, engaging with each other, and to ensure that those norms and values that are set are not discriminating or not disenfranchising on any group. So there's a certain understanding, and in the event that there is some disadvantage, an acceptance that a group accepts that my preference is disadvantageous to the wider group, or the wider group accepts that they have to let go, they have to compromise on a certain value to engage or to be inclusive to another group. I think that's the premise by which we can then look to address a lot of these systemic issues, particularly the breakdown of the home. So, for example, one of the major challenges I think with the home environment is the economic situation. We have a situation now where many young people are saying, I prefer to not make many children. And much of that has to do with their perhaps experiences in relationships where they realize that it's very difficult sometimes to put together a home or to ensure that your partner remains committed to a particular relationship. And a lot of that is economic. Sometimes it's the father not being able to support that child. Sometimes it's the mother not having the resources to be able to sustain that home. So many young people now are saying, you know what, I prefer to not go down that route of making multiple children. But then you also think through the values that men have and the attitudes that men have towards relationships. There's this term called toxic masculinity, which speaks to the perceptions that males have about masculinity. That as a man, I need to be this, I need to be macho, I need to represent this type of person. And a lot of times that prevents them from, although you would expect that having that feeling, you would be driven to be the man of the home, right? And to ensure that your family sticks together. But many times that leads to dysfunction because the male is sometimes overly domineering and is not creating that environment in the home that nurtures that sort of household environment. So we need to go back to the drawing board and ask ourselves, is it classism within the society that is contributing to that breakdown of the home? Is it the distribution of resources in society where the higher class, the upper class of society is controlling majority of the resources and not trickling down those resources, or these resources are not trickling down to the working class? Are we a lot more individually oriented because of the economic situation and not thinking of the collective good? You know, so there's a counter argument that in making more children, you know, some people say, some people encourage others to make more children that then you can afford, because in the long term, the growth of the population is going to contribute towards, of course, taxes, and then it's going to help the country to function and provide better services. So, you know, it's to go back to the drawing board and have these conversations, but it takes leadership to bring people together and to have these conversations, whether it be through civil society spaces, local government, referendums, you know, different ways, debating and engaging residents so that people are able to come to an understanding of what is the country that we would like to see in the next 10 to 15 years or more, and what are the steps, the policy actions, the mechanisms that are needed to guide us in that direction. So there's just so much weight being placed on the home right now. And yes, I mentioned some of the local challenges. We also have the international influence. We have globalization, where the young woman is realizing now that her future is not confined to the household. That she is free to explore career opportunities abroad. And that's a disconnect from the home. Whether you might travel with your child, but many times you might just decide, to go out to study and pursue a life and spend time away from the home. So there's these different pull factors or push factors rather, that discourage the household from norming and forming as it would have in earlier days.
Every study, every statistic tells the same story. Our boys and men are falling behind in education, in health, in physical well being, in economic stability. At Ideas for Boys and Men, we've made it our mission to dig deeper, to understand the real root causes, and to deliver practical, powerful solutions that restore hope and direction. Whether you're a young man searching for purpose or someone who cares deeply about the next generation, you don't have to figure it out alone. Visit ideasslu.org. Explore our services, join the movement, and discover how you can find purpose and meaning and direction in your life. Ideas for Boys and Men, because your future matters.
Yeah. I think that's a very good analysis of the situation coming from top down. But I tend to think about it coming from bottom up. And there's a point on the spectrum that it meets. There's a point that is on the spectrum that we connect. I look at it based on the 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 belief systems of an individual. What an individual believes today is so different than what an individual used to believe back then. And what I am seeing is that one of the major problems that we are faced with in today's society is that young people and our society has lost its connection to meaning, has lost its connection to value, and the loss of value is an attack on what it means, what life means. We have lost. I think people are giving up on their lives, whether it is suicide, whether it is crime, whether it is imprisonment, especially men, is because they have lost the meaning in life. And if you do not have a meaning in life, if your life don't mean anything, somebody else's life don't mean anything. I read this book and I came up with this by reading the book called Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. And Viktor Frankl was explaining that there is what you call the existential crisis of our time. And what he said, this existential crisis of our time is characterized by three major events. You have aggression, you have addiction, and you have depression. When an individual, let's say a man, doesn't know what his life, who doesn't have value in his life, or like you correctly said, when you have all those forces, the global forces that impact the individual, because before it was easier for him to be what you'd call a male. It's easier for him to get positive reinforcement from being a male, from providing, from protecting, from doing all of that. But now it is so difficult because of the change in our political and environmental factors. So now that tends to multiculturalism in some sense changes your beliefs. And that's another point that I can make. But when our society is so strongly individualistic, it's so strongly individualistic. And the point that you made about the community, and I think it's the thinker, that guy, John Locke, or one of them, or Thomas Rousseau, that speaks about the fact that you must, to have a social contract, you must be able to sacrifice something you would want for the collective aim. But today's society, we have not merging in the collective aim. We do not have a shared vision. We do not have a shared purpose of what we want the country to be. We do not have a shared vision of what we want our institutions to look like. Everybody wants what they want for themselves, and we are sacrificing the collective aim. So we are very individualistic. We are not making the necessary sacrifices, especially in the home. As a man with a family, you need to sacrifice for your family. As somebody that's part of an organization, you need to sacrifice for the organization to move forward. You need to sacrifice what you want in the current moment for the organization to go forward. So if you are not a bit less and you are more self-centered and selfish. You focus on you alone. You focus on what you want, and that's where the breakdown begins. The breakdown begins is in the psychology of the individuals in the society, the psychology of the parents in the home, and in the psychology of the teachers in the school, and the psychology of the representatives of the non-profit organizations, in the psychology of the police officers. All of that, the breakdown begins internally. So that's when you realize we have more of what we have. It's a spiritual problem, and the spiritual problem affects, well, the spiritual problem, our mind, our thinking, our value system. And then based on the way we act, it becomes a feedback loop. When we now act selfishly, it creates a breakdown in the family. It creates a breakdown in the community. It creates a breakdown in the society. And then we have a difficult economic situation. It could be that the economic situation affects that, but like I said, it's top down. It could be like the state, the decisions and the policies that is implemented by the state can affect that, because you need to understand to some degree, like I always tell person, you must have a theology, and your theology, you must have a philosophy that backs up your theology, and your philosophy is backed up by an ideology. An ideology is a system of ideas that you extract one idea from and you apply it into policy which affects the behavior of a set of people. But if you are strong-willed enough, if you are seen, if you have a strong spiritual connection and you understand what's happening, there is a push against that. And that's one of the things that I'm seeing happening. There's a dual effect. It's coming from top down, policy, government, but it's still being affected. The persons, the individuals in the society is still giving up the freedom. They're still giving up the ability to do what's right in the face of difficulty.
Working towards a valuable aim in life, one that benefits you, your family, your community, and your society, has been proven to give men a deeper sense of purpose and meaning. It transforms idle, destructive aggression into focused, ambitious action. One book that captures this truth is Purpose Driven. The meaning of life is found in the purpose to live. If you are a young boy or man searching for direction, this is one of the books you should investigate, because discovering your purpose is the first step towards changing your life. Get your copy on Amazon or call 725-8562.
What do you think about that?
And on that point, no, that's a really good point. I like that you stressed on this whole shift from the collective to the individual orientation of people. And I want to go back to the whole point on the perspective that Rawls had on the social contract theory, which is premised on prioritizing the needs of the state. You know, the state meaning the contract between people within a jurisdiction, how they agree to live together. However, this time has, we've modernized as a society and globalization has kicked in. The boundaries of the state have been eroded by global values, So, like you said, individuals are now that unit of focus. We believe that our values are perhaps, or our needs and our priorities are perhaps more important, more significant than the needs of the state. That values that we may have connected with beyond the borders of the state, international values, or what we've observed in other regions. Sometimes that seems more attractive than what the state has accepted as its norms and its values. So a lot of those things weigh on our society. And, yes, there are benefits to globalization, but I tend to believe that what we can see in the immediate when we wake up and we step outside is perhaps more significant than everything else that's happening outside, because we first have to take care of ourselves as communities before we can look to take care of the world. We have to be prepared as people, as citizens of a country, build our resilience, build our skill sets, build our relationships, our attitudes, to be prepared to deal with the world out there. So that's a significant point. And I think more and more as we look at the challenges weighing on the home, many people tend to say, yes, more parenting training, but you could only do that much parenting training. It goes back to me, the social agreements that we as a society can come together and
agree upon.
Whether it be advocate for policies, advocate for mechanisms and programs that will ensure that we protect that unit.
Yeah, but what do you think? How do you think we bring the thinking because of the young people back to it? So, okay, what's valuable? What should we accept as a society that we agree to is valuable for us to move forward? Because we need our young people. We are in the wilderness at this point. We don't know where is up. We don't know where is down. Because in order for you to ground those things in your organization and for you to advocate for it based on policy, we need to all agree that, hey, family is important. Community is important. What else is important? What are the other values that we are letting go of? Discipline, personal responsibility. Those things are important. We need to be able to specify what it is that is valuable to then bring to our young people and say, hey, this is what's valuable. I believe change happens bottom up. And that's why I'm a big advocate of the English legal system, common law. I think change happens bottom up. I don't think change should be implemented on a top-down basis. Because to implement change on a top-down basis is to say, you know everything that needs to be done for everyone. And we have seen in many, many examples that Pol Pot, Cambodia, Mao, we have seen that those things don't work. A top-down system don't work. I believe a bottom-up approach to the solution to the problem, especially starting with the youth, letting them know, hey, how can we come and say, hey, this is valuable? How can we make what we have lost cool again? Not just cool, but make it accepted. Make the home accepted. Make the family values accepted, because our moral landscape has changed tremendously. All the crimes we are seeing, all the young people, we have lost about 59 so far. 59 young men and again, going back to the young men, 59 have gone this year, and we're still in September. So that means that there is a deep problem. And I actually heard the PM said nobody is bringing solutions. Everybody is criticizing, and nobody is bringing solution. Here is a solution for you. Let's go back to not just go back. I think that's a wrong way to say. Let's extract the best of our inheritance. What we knew worked before. What are the elementary ideas that we cannot negotiate with? Because at this point in the wilderness, we are negotiating with everything. We are negotiating with gender. We are negotiating with whether our family is even important. We are negotiating with changing the family structure. We are negotiating with everything. We have no non-negotiables. And then when you open the gate for one spirit to come into, one characteristic, one demon, for lack of a better word, to come into the society, you think the gate is open. Others come in as well. So you're going to include this one. You open the gate. I'm going to include this one. You're not taking it to be accounts the orders that are coming in as well. You're not paying attention to the orders that are coming in as well, because you open the gate to include just this one, but orders are running through the society, and orders are wiping out the society. There's this there's this Greek story of Kronos. There's this story of Kronos. The Kronos, so it's a Greek story. Let me see if I can remember it. And what the story is about is there's this king or god or whatever it was. His name was Kronos, and he said to him that his children will dethrone him. And what he started doing, he started eating up all his children. They transferred to that story was the god Kronos. He was called the god Saturn in the Roman system. But there was an agnostic interpretation that removed him to Satan. They call him Satan. And the idea is that whenever Satan is involved in something, Satan, for lack of a better word, the missing of what's good, is involved in something going as far back as Greek mythology. He eat the young people. All the young people are dying. And if you look at it properly in a biblical text, for persons that like to read the Bible, when Moses came on the scene, and Pharaoh didn't want Moses to be born. He sent his guards to kill all the young men. When Christ, Jesus, came on the scene, and then the religious leader at the time didn't want him to be born, he sent to kill all the young people. Today, all our young people are dying. I'm not saying it's not a policy problem. I'm not saying it's not an economic problem. And I'm totally agreeing there's a disparity between there's an economic disparity between the haves and have-nots, which caters for the resentment in the soul of young people. But then it must go back. It must go back to the fact that there is a spiritual problem that is affecting our nation. You cannot tell me you have 200 or 300 young people being dead in 3 to 4 years, and we only looking at it at an economic level. It's true you can bring economic solutions because think about that. And I was reading a book that saying when somebody has an addiction in the soul, even when you give them money, the money will kill them faster because the money only processing the material that he's addicted to. Let's say he's addicted to drugs, and you give him money,
Right.
he will be buying more drugs. It's not the money sometimes the lack of money even saves him. Because when he doesn't have money, he don't participate in the drugs. But if he has an addiction in his soul, it's a soul problem. It's a depression problem. It's an anxiety problem. It's a mental problem. When you give him that money, he'll just be participating in the drugs. He'll just be taking more drugs. I think we need to solve that problem at a deeper level. And that deeper level is coming up for young men like me and you, is to say, well, those things are non-negotiables. Family, discipline, order, rule of law, gender. Those things are non-negotiable. We cannot negotiate with everything and accept that the society is going to prosper from that. We are decaying as a society. We are decaying as a country. What is the solution?
Right. Because at the core of a society means that you need strong institutions. Strong institutions to be that regulator for the behaviors of people. So if the judiciary is not functioning as it should, if law enforcement is not playing their role as they should, if our central government, politicians, parliamentarians, policymakers are not generating the policy and are not engaging the populace or leading as they should. And it's very difficult to manage a society where people have so many different values. So I agree that I think it has to go back to the core non-negotiables. And at the core of it is a conversation with people, whether it be through a civil society driven approach or, government facilitating the environment for policy debates, discussions on where do we want to go. And I think everybody has a desire to see a better society, but we need to be able to compromise and to say, yes, I want this, but to see the country move in this direction, I need to be willing to let go of this to get that. So I think it redounds to that. And it takes a maturity for us to get to that point, so politically, we're still it's still a very politically charged environment. We're still very polarized. It's either you red or yellow, and if you're opposed to a yellow policy, people call you red. If you're opposed to a red policy, people call you yellow. But there has to be a space where people feel open enough to sharing ideas independently and debating on what works, right? Debating on what works, providing the evidence to what makes it effective, and comparing it against what has happened in the past. Because history is a very good indicator of what will happen in the future. Mm-hmm. So we have to be willing to look at the past objectively and say, red and yellow have been involved in what we have here today. So if these things have contributed, if these parties have contributed in one way or the other to the dysfunction of our society, then clearly we have to do something different. So it takes mature leadership and a mature political environment to bring people together to have that discussion.
Yeah, but and I'm going to ask you this question. I think that's the right time to ask you this question. You as an individual, what are you aiming to solve in some sense? What is your individual purpose for your life and for your family life and for your community and for your nation? And what can we see that at the end of the experience of Ajani Le Bon, at the end, what did he bring into the nation of St. Lucia? What did he bring into the region of the Caribbean? What is he aiming at? What problem is on his mind and in his heart? And what is he trying to do about it?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think at the core of my beliefs is development. It's to become a better person that is every day living to ensure that your actions are leading to the good of society or contributing towards making somebody's life better, reducing the strife within my space. So making it easy for people to engage with me, making it easy for people to share how they feel. And that I believe that through that people feel open to having conversations about real issues that we can support each other and work together. But the bigger concern for me is the distribution of resources within society. Who has the power and how is that power shared and distributed within society? And I think that's at the core of a lot of the issues that we face. In that, you spoke about the preference for a bottom-up approach. I think we can still have a leadership, a governance at the top facilitating action, facilitating development that is owned by the people, that power that is shared. But we don't see that. We see people being elected into office who cling on to power and very rarely give people the opportunity to be directly involved in the decisions that are being made. So you see development occurring without engaging people. In a community, you would like to develop a hotel, you like to introduce some infrastructure, but people are really engaged in determining what that looks like, where it's located, how the developers interact with the people in that area, what are the terms of the agreement. And that's a basic example of why I think we need to really rethink how our society is structured and the mechanisms that we use or that are used to govern our country. I think the local government, we need to ensure local government actually works, that in districts, people have ownership of policy development and development generally, that people can elect representatives at the district level who can advocate on their behalf, that civil society has a greater role to play, that we need to go back to ensuring that we have groups and organizations taking ownership of development in their community as opposed to leaving it up to a politician to call shots. And I also think about accountability, holding people accountable for not delivering to people. So you elected somebody and they did not deliver. How will that person be held accountable? Can we look to recall that person? What about the Integrity Commission? What about electoral and political reform, where people have mandated to disclose their assets, that there is that level of transparency? So we know that people who are leading us are doing so with the utmost integrity. So it's releasing that power to the people so that people have the ownership of the country. And right now, it's very clear, I think, in many ways, when we see the issue of crime and violence, poverty, education, the state of the economy, power is being controlled. You have a minority having a monopoly over the resources within our country. And that definitely needs to change. We need to have conversations around how we restructure our society to bring that power back to the people.
And I think that's a noble aim. I think that's a very good aim. And I was writing a proposal recently, and I went through some articles from IMF and some articles from UNDP and from those organizations, and I was made aware of that majority of the crimes, and I can put those articles down in our video link for persons interested in reading it. Majority of the crimes are directly associated with what you call what you call marginalization in some sense. Not just marginalization. You were using that word when one side of the population has all the wealth on the inequality. Yes, inequality. They said there's a direct link between high crime rates and inequality. And one of them, they were explaining how it might lead to resentment. It might lead to, because you are living so close to another individual that has so much, and you yourself you are lacking. And that's why I say your aim is a noble one, to the redistribution of wealth. But one thing we have to keep in mind, and I put a but into that, because when I read those things with an analytical mind. There are persons when they take an article and they read it, it's like everything in the article is correct. It's God sent. It's like, nah. I analyze that and I look into myself and I say, but look around. You have persons, it's true, we would like a redistribution. Fine, redistribution, fine, top down. But who are you redistributing to? Let's think about that. Who are you redistributing to? And what I am trying to say is that persons need to take more responsibility. If we are going to have redistribution, if we are going to take into consideration that, let's just say this person created value for himself, and he is reaping the fruits from the value that he created for himself. He's a hard worker. He spent a lot of sleepless nights putting his business in order. He's doing all of that. And we would like to tax him more so that we could use the money to redistribute it into the society. But the persons you are redistributing to, they don't even care about anything to do with the society. They do not want to participate in the society. They are not making the necessary sacrifices. And that's where I speak about sacrifices. And that's where I go to reading the story of Cain and Abel, because I interpret those things from that point of view. I interpret those things from that story. Cain, I made a very clear distinction between Cain and Abel. Cain is cant. I read Cain as cant, carnality. You cannot sacrifice. What was the central idea of the story? Abel gave the best sacrifice. Abel is ability to sacrifice, to make things happen, to sacrifice what you want in this current moment, working towards an aim. And you have other persons who do not sacrifice, who are hedonistic. They want everything now. They do not want to make the sacrifice. They do not want to make the necessary sacrifice for the collective. So if you are going to redistribute and you are going to take from the persons who are able to sacrifice and to work towards an aim, and some persons might say every rich person stole from somebody else. I'm not saying they do not have corruption, but I don't think every rich person at the top of the organization, or at the top of the field of representation, had achieved that by only stealing and only doing what's wrong. I think there are persons that have made good contribution to society, and we can't debate whether or not they don't require what was given to them. But the other persons at the bottom of the hierarchy, and I look at them all the time, you have persons who know they cannot afford and still take the money and buy a carnival costume. There are persons who know the children need money to go to school and still use all that money to drink alcohol. You have people at the bottom, they know the economic situation on them side, and on their side, it's not a positive economic situation. And they have the latest in everything. So if we are going to redistribute, it's somebody else will just become a millionaire on the head. You redistribute, the persons that own the rum factory will always be getting the money. You redistribute, the carnival bands will be getting all the money. You redistribute, the persons that are feeding the hedonistic behaviors, they will always bring all the money back to them. So it's difficult to redistribute and maintain that redistribution over time, if persons you are redistributing to do not take personal responsibility.
Yeah, and that's a critical point. So my perspective on the whole redistribution is more about ensuring that power is shared within the society, and not necessarily what persons may see as, the general social safety approach, where you look at, significant social programs that provide, whether it be, cash distribution or that premises cash distribution sometimes, or tries to overtax the rich so that those funds can be diverted towards underprivileged persons. Although I think there's still a space for that. But again, it's going back to the whole Rawlsian idea that it has to take a compromise. And if the rich in a society agree that I'm okay in being taxed 10% more to go towards this group, then that's acceptable. But it shouldn't be that a minority, that is a group of politicians, an executive branch of government decides that that is what's best for the society without having a mechanism so that society could maturely agree on how that should be done, if you get me, right? So within a local government approach or in empowering a civil society to be part of that decision-making space, then you're able to have more perspective. And it's not the politician to decide, but it's the people within different mechanisms, different spaces who are saying that this is the community that we would like to see. Also on the point of attribution, for me, it is about having the political maturity to realize that, because we all have individual choices. And yes, you will still find being hedonistic, being individually oriented, being more focused on what I can get in that given time. My thing is that opportunity is supposed to be accessible to as many people as possible. And that the way the society should be structured, it's to ensure as much as possible that we break those class barriers to access an opportunity. Because that has led to a lot of the marginalization within our society. In the education system, it's clear. In any one classroom, the teacher focuses on the front row or the first two rows, the most academically inclined students. Those at the back are left behind because apparently that system does not meet their desire, or that system does not cater towards their needs. And that in itself is a barrier to accessing an educational opportunity. So when I think and speak about redistribution of power, it's that if you look at the classroom space as an example, how can our education system encourage more collectivism and shared educational opportunities? So students don't really like group work, right? But if you encourage collaboration in the classroom, where learning is not about, me wanting to place first in the class all the time, but in collaborative approaches, we can encourage students to share skill sets, share experiences. My weaknesses might be your strengths, and your strengths my weaknesses. That means we are already encouraging a society that is focused more on compromise and collaboration, exchange of ideas, debate, dialogue, rather than let me see what I can get for myself. And if I become successful, I have no obligation to focus on or to contribute towards the group that has not been given the same opportunity that I was given. So I think it's from that perspective. It's more about how we can restructure our approach to governance to ensure that it's not a minority that has a monopoly over decision making and a monopoly over the direction of the country.
Yeah, you are so correct. And when you were speaking, an exercise I did in my class came to mind, and then I realized that society can only be organized based on the fundamental elementary principles that are imbued in life. And what I'm saying is that when I started my class, I started teaching RC boys about 2 years ago, and I read this book, teaching boys reaching boys. And I also read another book talking about how males think. And what I did based on, because when you have knowledge must be practical, just like policies must be practical. But sometimes the policies are so not grounded in reality that it's just nice words on a page and it's sitting on a desk somewhere. So we have to ground policies in a biological framework. But I don't want to go into that. So when I started the teaching, what I did, I took football kits. I going based on the idea, the philosophy that a valuable aim in life is important for development. So how to make that practical? I bought 2 football kits and I hung them right in the class. And I said, hey, we are going to have termly goals. And the termly goals, we are going to create monthly goals. And the monthly goals, we are going to create weekly goals. And that's grade 4s. That's amazing. That's grade 4s. And everybody wanted the kit. I bought a Messi kit and I bought a Ronaldo kit. Boys, they love football. And I hung that in the class. They see it every day. And what was amazing to me, what was so amazing to me was that they were not only competing to win the kit, they were cooperating. During that time, there was a lesson where I had my projector and I had a wheel game on the board. And when you spin the wheel, You have to stop it on a specific letter or blend, and you have to create words out of that. So they created two camps. We created two camp A and camp B, and they actually I didn't do that. They actually organized themselves. They put the ones that somebody was writing, and they covered him. On camp B, another person was writing. When I spin the wheel, let's say it's London and a blend, so they have to write the most words with that blend as much as possible. And they're working together. They're working together. They're protecting the writer. They're protecting the person with the word. They're protecting the person with the word. And one of them, what I find out so interesting, he actually left his camp to go and spy on the other camp. And the other camp set another student as a police officer to protect against the one that come in and spy on them. All that happened in the class spontaneously, all while working towards two persons going to win the kit for the team. Two. And they work so well cooperatively. In competition, they must have cooperation. They must have cooperation in competition. So, and I agree with you when you say the shared power. The shared power cannot be effective without each and every one of us in our society agreeing to work towards that aim. And that aim, I think is going to spend a lot of time specifying what we value the most of our society. Because we are at a point where the values of our society, I'm going back to that, the values of our society has been shaken. It's going to be very difficult for us to sit down as a society and say we agree on this, we agree on this, we agree on this, and what we agree on should be practical. It should be real. It shouldn't harm anyone. We know that harm principle. We must agree on what's beneficial for our society. And if we do not have that valuable aim, if we do not have that collective gain, the shared power will always devolve into what we see at this point. Breakdown in institutions, crime, violence, breaking down our family, economic inequality. Because the top oligarchy class will want power. The bottom and the top oligarchy class will say, okay, I'm giving you power, but we don't share the same values. You are using the power I am giving you to further break me down. So a centralization back to power and back to economic inequality.
Yeah, and the whole idea of shared power is not assuming that, you will end up agreeing on everything, because that's the beauty of a society, that people have the freedom to believe what they believe. But that there's a maturity, and naturally people get to dialogue and agree on what I will compromise to ensure that there is a certain outcome. So naturally people tend to agree, and they can do so maturely without violence, without discrimination.
Yeah. But I think we can continue having that conversation. We can continue moving forward. We are having we're looking ideas, our organization, ideas for boys and men. We're really looking to get off the ground with our organization to help develop the young males in our society. We are having an event in December, financial literacy for males, for at-risk youth. We're targeting some of the males. We want to bring some very impactful speakers. We want to bring the state, based on the book that I read. We want to bring the state, somebody from the Prime Minister's office or the Prime Minister himself. We want to bring somebody from the market, one of them construction workers, whether the skill developers. And we want to bring the institutions, as some institutions, just like the banks, the youth economy. We want to bring a representative from the creative economy to let the young at-risk people know there are opportunities for them, to let them know that the state needs them, to let them know that the market cannot function without them. That's a very good area to close on the inequality in our society, educating the at-risk youth. And we're trying to get that done. And we hope that you will be involved. We hope that you will be a part of our developments. Ideas for Boys and Men. We are a young organization. We were just established officially on the 7th of May. And we're really working to get things going. And part of our mission is to develop young people, young at-risk people, to contribute to our community and our society. And we're trying to really get it off the ground. We're extending our invitation to you and all the resources that you have, your capabilities, your desire, your mission. And we can work towards something meaningful together. I mean, cooperation and competition goes on.
Yeah, I look forward to that. And I like what you guys are doing. We do have organizations many organizations that focus on men and young men. So I think you guys are like pioneers in a unique way. And I really hope that as you continue, there are a lot more people that will gravitate towards this, because as you're saying, there needs to be specific intervention for young men, and young men need male figures that they can look up to provide that guidance.
Yeah. So we have gotten to our mark. I think we'll continue having that conversation. I think we think we had a good conversation. We can continue having those open conversations, and let's see where we could germinate into. I think podcasting is something that is a sharing of ideas, the marketplace of ideas, and we need to formulate a soul for our country and our region, what ideas, and to have those open conversations. So I thank you for your time, and I am looking forward to having a conversation with you again. Anytime you want to have a conversation, you can always let me know, and we can continue what we start here. All right?
Sure. Thanks.
You have any-
Looking forward to any future engagement.
You have any last words before we end?
No, just to thank you for the platform, and I just hope that we can encourage more of that conversation. There's, I think, a subculture where people who are outspoken sometimes are seen as disruptive, and people tend to think, who do you think you are? And, why do you think you have a solution or idea for everything? But to me, it's what we should encourage. I feel like everybody should be open enough to sharing how they feel and debating about it. And even if I disagree with you, we can do so respectfully. So yeah, that's my general thoughts in closing.
Well, thank you, and let's continue the journey from strength to strength. All right?
Yes, thanks.
Yeah.
Are you nurturing an idea for personal growth, business innovation, or social change through a non-profit organization or government institution, but unsure of where to begin? Or perhaps you started the journey and hit a roadblock, or the results aren't matching your expectations. Let Apex Strategy be your guide in transforming your idea into reality. We help you clarify the right direction for your idea, ensuring it serves a greater purpose and finds its true meaning. Beyond that, we provide the expertise to build a structure where your idea can truly thrive. Our insights in strategy, optimization, and the seamless integration of cutting-edge technology and AI will breathe life into your idea. We offer learning and development consulting, where we help align your idea with global, regional, national industrial trends and policies by equipping you and your staff with the proper skills to be competent on the global scale, which is driven by the ideas of the fourth industrial revolution. We also offer organizational structure consulting, where we build the structure around your idea, giving it the foundation to stand tall and grow into something powerful. We offer project consulting, where we find out where you are using data and optimize processes as to where you should be by integrating the appropriate technology for your idea's life cycle. We also offer Apex Media, where we provide a meaningful narrative to the market surrounding your idea, not just social media posts, but the story of what your idea represents. We also do project proposal writing, business plan, regional and international procurement. If you are serious about turning your idea into reality, call us at 725-8562. Check out our website. We are also on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and TikTok.